The Competition Authority of Kenya is hosting the Consumer International Congress in the country, which brings together sector players to deliberate on ways to enhance fair competition in the marketplace. The event, which was officially opened by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, is the first to be held in Africa. Jim Bogo is there and joins us with more on how the authority intends to harness fair competition in the market at the backdrop of steel companies paying fines for cartel-like operations. Good afternoon, Jimmy.
Well, thank you very much, Noah. Very good afternoon to you too. Yes, as you rightfully said, this is the Consumer International Congress that happens after every 4 years. That is going on here in Nairobi for the very first time in Africa. Now, as you again, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was here earlier on. He was the official guest of honor who was opening this conference, just talking on the need for harmonization of some of these policies, particularly the ones that protect the consumers. Now, I want to engage. That is Mr. Adano Roba, who is the acting MD, the acting Director General at the Competition Authority of Kenya, just to understand the landscape of the competition in the country and also some of the other factors that have come up in the recent past. But Nawario, thanks so much for making time to speak to KTN. So let's first of all start from the beginning. One of the big conversations, particularly in as far as competition goes, is the question of harmonization. Now, I just want to understand, where is this process, and particularly in terms of harmonization of policies across the East African region?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. The harmonization process started a long time ago when even we are drafting the laws and the regulations. And that harmonization has been ongoing from the word go, that Competition Authority of Kenya has dual mandate of both competition and consumer protection. And that harmonization we have been enforcing through engagement with other competition agencies. And we have been in that process in ensuring that our laws are harmonized across the region. And also we have engaged the Competition Commission of COMESA, that our regulations are actually aligned because of cross-border dimension of consumer and competition issues. Yeah. So our laws are actually harmonized as we speak.
Seeing a lot of commodity prices going up, and of course this is because of other factors and not necessarily competition. So as an authority, how are you then preparing to, how are you protecting the consumer from this rising cost of commodities?
You are right in terms of the influence of consumer commodities is external factors. However, as an authority, we do monitor prices in the way that we ensure price variation or increases are not as a result of parties colluding, coming together to increase their margins. So in that sense, although we don't regulate what comes into the country in terms of inputs for production of commodities, we ensure that price variation is not too much outside the import or cost of production locally.
All right. Now, and speaking of just cracking the whip, one of the things that we saw recently is the fact that 9 steel companies bear the brunt of this. And of course, you find them about 338 million shillings. Can you take us through that process and how you ended up at that decision that they need to be fined?
It's a lengthy process, and that's a matter that has been with us for 3 years. And what we have done is to first have an indication of the price variation locally. And if you recall, when we started, we looked at what are the trends in price changes of steel sector. We looked at what if that variation in prices by the players has any order in terms of price increases. As you know, we are a liberal market, and therefore individual players should increase their prices as per what input they have given to the production process, and therefore based on that they can include their margins. But what we realized, including that screening report as we call it, is that we have observed parties were increasing, or players were increasing prices every other day in a very systematic manner. That one is increasing the following day, the other is increasing the subsequent day. They are increasing in sequence. And that's what gave us indication that there was a play among the players, that they were increasing prices in tandem, sort of. So what we did was to go into the market, establish those trends actually exist, and find out from the players, all the way from retailers to the manufacturers, that variation in price actually exists, and therefore provided clear evidence for the authority to intervene in the market. And therefore we ensure that the law provided that basis, that procedurally the law is very clear in terms of what steps needs to be done. Now, once we established that fact, we went to raid the parties, and we established that there were two factors which are key for us to raid those parties. Two, that they were increasing prices, price fixing as we call it. Second, they were restricting imports for them to reduce production and therefore reduce suppressed supply and therefore increase prices. So based on that, we penalize those parties we have just mentioned. And once we penalize, there are two stages to it. One, parties can come to us and agree to settle what they have done, the conduct is in violation of the Competition Act. Two, if they are not in agreement, then they can take us to Competition Tribunal. Except two parties which have resolved, others are now in the process of either settling or before the tribunal for determination.
When we're talking about mobile money interoperability,
yes,
there are those who feel that this has not worked to their advantage. Maybe, is this something that you are appraised on, and what are you doing as an authority towards just making sure that there's sanity in that space?
There are few players in the market, and therefore the issue of concern there is issues with dominance firms. How big a company is does not mean that they are abusing their position, because there's issue around market power, and therefore what we see in the telecom sector is we have one big firm and other players in the market. But what if you realize that big firm will not determine price without considering what other players are going to respond to that determination. Therefore, what is happening in that sector is we are aware of, but parties are allowed to innovate and grow in size. But one thing that authority will not entertain is abuse of dominance, that one party, by its own decision, unilaterally, is determining prices and affecting the market as a whole. There has to be choice in the market, but I fully agree with you that there is initial capital investment required for you to enter the sector. And that's one of the major constraints, that no party from the government side can intervene and provide that capital.
All right, Bonario, thank you so much for making time to speak to us. And of course, Noah, there you have it. We'll be giving you more details in our subsequent bulletin, particularly on what the Deputy President said, and of course also what the Chairman touched on during his speech. But for now, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Jimmy. At this particular moment, Business Today takes a short break. When we come back, still more from the world of business. Stay tuned.